Morant with a running start. Elevates. Oh, it dunks. Oh, my goodness.
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn his heat. It's gone. Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now a three. Count it. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant. He hit it. John Morant, insanity.
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parrish. I am recording this episode from Las Vegas. I am out here for the NBA Summer League, and there are a lot of things to talk about regarding the Memphis Grizzlies. There's a lot of news to go over. There is the Grizzlies Summer League game where they beat the Chicago Bulls in their first game in Vegas. G.G. Jackson made some big shots down the stretch. Kenneth Lofton Jr. had a huge second half. There also, of course, was a Desmond Bane press conference. There was a Marcus Smart press conference. The Grizzlies made an intriguing trade that we haven't talked about yet with the Phoenix Suns. Also, the Dillon Brooks sign and trade went through. The NBA announced the details of their in-season tournament. So, a lot of stuff to talk about. I don't know how much of it we will get to on this episode, but I'm going to start with the big picture, team stuff, and then we can get to the Summer League game. I think the biggest thing this summer, this offseason for the Grizzlies, is the acquisition of Marcus Smart. And with the end of the NBA's moratorium, the signing, the trade could be made official. And so there was a press conference welcoming him, and Marcus said all the right things, I feel like. He was charismatic. He was smiling and quick to laugh. Talked about how he wanted to bring his winning drive to this team, how he thought he would fit in great. He considered the move to Memphis to be a new beginning, a fresh start. Zach Kleiman talked about how Marcus was the team's pie-in-the-sky addition, or their number one target. Basically, when they ended the season disappointingly, they said, who's the guy we wish we could bring in? Now, of course, we can take that with a little bit of a grain of salt, like GMs always say. Oh, yeah, this was the one player in our dream scenario we could have ended up with. But I do think that Marcus Smart is a good fit on the Grizzlies, like I've spelled out in previous episodes. Talking with other NBA folks, people who don't cover the Grizzlies specifically, they generally feel like this acquisition is very, very good for the team. Most people consider Marcus Smart just to be a quote-unquote winning basketball player, a guy who just does the right things to bring victories wherever he's going to play. Some people view him as like a grown-up for a team that desperately needs a grown-up. I think we look at this move as bringing in someone who can be a role model and a leader. Marcus was asked about his role being a leader, and he just said, that might be something he does, but of course he has to win over the locker room first. He has to gain their trust because he's a new guy. But he does look forward to that opportunity for doing that. I asked him about the parallels between him and Tony Allen, how both of those guys, Oklahoma State guys, both played for the Celtics, both coming to the Grizzlies at the age of 29. And I asked him if he's spoken to Tony. He did say he hadn't spoken to Tony yet, but was going to. But then he told a great story about the first time he ever met Tony. I'll play that for you here. This is from the press conference.
It's so funny because when I first met Tony Allen, I was at the Top 100 camp when I was in high school, and he was one of the camp counselors. And we were playing one-on-one, and I forgot who it was, but one of the guys was going off, and he was like, who can stop him? Anybody here can stop him, let me know. And I'm looking around like, that's me. So, you know what I'm saying? So I step up, and I'm like, I got him. Don't even worry about it. Everybody else can sit down. And he's like, who are you? He's like, hold on. Okay. Oh, that's Oklahoma State right there. You know what I'm saying? So And then, I get to stop, and, the gym goes crazy, and Tony's going crazy. He was like, I already know it. I already know. He's going to Oklahoma State. He got that dog in him. You know how Tony's talking. So he's going in. So right then and there, we had that bond, and to see how our careers have been similar is kind of crazy.
So Marcus, obviously aware of the parallels that, about him and Tony. And then I also asked him, I thought it was pretty funny. If you've listened to the show, I don't love the offensive foul rule in the NBA. I don't love charges. I don't like charges for aesthetic reasons. I don't like charges for safety reasons. I think it's an unbelievably dangerous play. I think the NBA rules are written incorrectly. They incentivize violent collisions. We've seen Ja Morant get injured on these plays. We saw Giannis Antetokounmpo in the playoffs get injured on these plays. So, of course, I had to ask Marcus Smart about the value of the charge, and we had a pretty fun interaction. Marcus actually apparently had a 4-point treatise on the benefits of the charge. So here's that entire interaction from the press conference.
This is a question for Marcus and for Taylor. So, Marcus, you've won 3 Hustle Player of the Year awards. A lot of that, you draw a lot of charges, and the Grizzlies, the past few seasons, for whatever reasons, don't draw that many charges. 2 years ago, you took more charges than the entire Grizzlies team did, by the way. So I'm curious, Marcus, are you going to help out in that element with the Grizzlies? Do you think that's something you're going to do? And then, Taylor, I'm curious, is the lack of drawn charges, is that personnel, is that strategic? That the Grizzlies sometimes have been on the lower end of drawn charges across the league.
But no, of course, I'm definitely going to try to help out that. Most people don't understand what a charge really does for the game and for that team. A charge is something I like to say. A charge is the only play in basketball that do 4 things correct. So you take a charge, that's obviously a personal foul on the guy, whoever drove the ball. It's a team foul on the team. That's the second good thing. Also, we also know 9 times out of 10, the person who's driving the ball is probably the team's best player. So that's an advantage. It's right there with that. That's a foul against their best player. That's 3. And it's a momentum changer, which is huge. Now you got guys thinking when they come into the lane, I got to be aware because this guy might come out of nowhere and take a charge. And I already got 2 fouls. I can't pick up a 3rd one. Now, it's a mental thing. And that's why a charge is so important, and that's why I think the charge is the most important play in the game, and definitely being able to take those charges is definitely going to help the defense.
Got time for one more question coming in from Zoom.
Yeah, just real quick. I hope Marcus is up for it. He'll run the drill in training camp that we've been trying to get. I think our rotations are great. It's just taking that next level. I think for us, our schemes put us in positions to take charges, and I mentioned one of the greatest characteristics of Marcus is being unselfish. And when we talk about our defense having been pretty good, last couple of years, I always say to be really good defensively, you have to be unselfish. Like the sacrifice even comes more on the defensive side, being in lockstep, rotations, having your teammates back. But being able to make that sacrifice and taking a charge is probably one of the most unselfish things you can do in just the game of basketball, especially on the defensive side of the floor. Yeah, we've struggled in that area. We've shown a lot of film on that. We haven't necessarily devised the drill. You got to be smart with what you do in practice. But if this guy right here to my left says, hey, we got to do something a little bit differently, and he leads by example, that's going to set a tone for us because when we do the small amount of times we had charges, you felt the impact. You felt the momentum. You felt the excitement that the bench created, and obviously made the film the next day. And we talked about how important of an unselfish winning play that was. That's what a Marcus Smart embodies every single time he steps on the floor. And when we sat down a couple of weeks ago, he said, Coach, I laid on the line, and every time I step on the court, I'm blessed and grateful to play basketball. The journey he's had as a person, as a player, he speaks highly about when he steps on the floor, whether it's practice, it's a workout, it's a game, he's going to lay it on the line. So when he comes and embodies that and showcases that and leads with that with our group, it's going to take our group to the next level, and hopefully we have a few more charges next year.
So obviously Marcus and Taylor both intend to increase the number of charges the Grizzlies draw, and maybe all those points Marcus made about the momentum swing and getting the opponents in foul trouble. Maybe it'll win me over. I still think it's dangerous. Please fix your rules, NBA. So Marcus Smart going to be a huge addition for the team. If I have any reservations or any nervousness about the move, it's not about Marcus Smart's abilities. It's just about maybe asking Marcus to do too much. I think we've all penciled him in as the starting point guard or at least starting in the backcourt alongside Desmond Bane while Ja Morant is suspended. We've also penciled him in as being the number one wing stopper on the Grizzlies, having to guard the other team's best player, be it a guard or a small forward or someone bigger. And to me, I wonder if at this point of his career, like, can he handle being the primary offensive creator and ball handler while also guarding the other team's best player? That feels like a lot to ask of one guy. And then, of course, once Ja Morant comes back, he's going to shift probably into more of a wing role and off-the-ball role. I have no question or qualms about his fit alongside Ja and Desmond, and all of them playing together. But I do think it's a lot to ask of him to play 30 minutes a game or 35 minutes a game as the primary creator and also as the primary defender. Yes, he did this a lot on the Celtics, but Jason Tatum's a great defender. Marcus Smart didn't have to always guard the best forward. Usually that was going to be Jason Tatum's job. Even Jaylen Brown is a pretty good defender. They had Grant Williams. Of course, the Grizzlies have Defensive Player of the Year, Jaren Jackson Jr., but Jaren's not going to be guarding as many perimeter guys as frequently. So it's a big ask. By the way, at the press conference, this little fact had escaped me. I didn't know this. Pete Pranik had told us that this is the first time in league history that a team has had the back-to-back Defensive Players of the Year on their team at the same time. So everyone's excited about the acquisition of Marcus Smart. The next day, there was a press conference for Desmond Bane as Desmond Bane signs this max contract, a 5-year extension. And Des was just beaming. Zach Kleiman saying it was a no-brainer decision, just the way that Des has gotten better each and every season. He's already, as we know, one of the best shooters in the NBA. He's a great complement to Ja Morant, to Jaren Jackson Jr. He's a great locker room leader for his on-court and off-court work ethic and just the way he lives his life. And Desmond talked about that, just saying how blessed he was for the contract, and he understands his leadership role, and it's exciting, I think. And Zach Kleiman and Taylor Jenkins both beaming, saying it's exciting to have him as a pillar of the Grizzlies team for the next few seasons. All right, now there was a trade that hasn't been made official yet, although it's possible it escaped my notice that it was made official. There was a reported trade with the Memphis Grizzlies with the Phoenix Suns where the Grizzlies traded 3 second-round picks for 2 first-round pick swaps in 2024 and 2030, and also for Isaiah Todd. Now, will Isaiah Todd ever suit up for the Grizzlies in the regular season? The odds are incredibly low. Isaiah Todd, once he gets added officially, will be the 17th guaranteed salary for the Grizzlies. Isaiah Todd has taken 44 field goal attempts in his 2-year NBA career. He was the 31st pick in 2021. He's taken 44 field goal attempts and made 10 of them so far. He was included in the Bradley Beal trade, going from the Wizards to the Suns. Now the Suns have dumped his contract to the Grizzlies. This trade, it's strange, or it's intriguing. It's odd. It's an interesting proposition from the Grizzlies. I'm in Vegas, and I would say this trade feels like a gamble. This feels like playing roulette, and instead of like I'm going to bet, like black or red, more of a coin flip proposition, this is betting like 4 numbers. You have a 10% chance of this deal turning out great for the Grizzlies. So what the Grizzlies received are these pick swaps that are the least good of the Suns and Wizards picks in 2024 and 2030. For these pick swaps to happen, the Grizzlies have to finish with a better record than both the Suns and the Wizards. So if the Grizzlies finish with a better record than both the Suns and the Wizards will get the best pick because of the pick swap of the Bradley Beal thing, and then the Grizzlies will get the second best pick. And the Suns will always get the worst pick. So, as an example, this next season, the 2024 pick, most people are anticipating the Suns will have a better record than the Grizzlies. If the Suns have a better record than the Grizzlies get nothing out of the 2024 swap. Now, the 2030 swap What are the odds the Grizzlies have a better record than the Suns and the Wizards? No idea. No one has any idea. This trade is made so you have the chance, and I don't even know how to quantify what that chance is. Is there a 15% chance that you could move up 5 picks? Maybe, but to me, that's what the deal seems to be. Like, it's probably not going to hurt the Grizzlies. 3 second-round picks. Second-round picks are somewhat fungible. You can trade them away. You can get them back. So the Grizzlies decided it was worth it to take in the money of Isaiah Todd to send out 3 second-round picks for the chance that in one of these 2 years, they could end up bettering their first-round draft pick. Also, of course, it is another asset you could trade, even if it is a slightly confusing one. The lesser of the 2 pick swap, they now have those on their books to include in their trade in 2024 and 2030. Like, they're not actual future first-round picks. They're sort of fake future first-round picks. From the Suns' perspective, this trade makes a lot of sense. First and foremost, the Suns shed salary. They cut their luxury tax. So that's, obviously something they wanted to do. They replenish their second-round picks. They had 0 second-round picks because they traded every one of them in the Durant and Bradley Beal trades. So they pick up 3 second-round picks. Now they can trade those for stuff or just use them on players. They replenish those second-round picks. They also think their risk is very, very low. Their exposure is very, very low. Even if the Grizzlies finish with a better record than the Suns, that probably means the Grizzlies have a great record, and the Suns probably gonna have a good record too. And they might drop down 3 spots, 2 spots, and then in 2030 they're gambling like there's a good chance they don't have to fulfill this swap. And so they said, what if there's a 20% chance that we have to swap it? That's worth it to pick up 3 second-round picks. I think it's more likely than not we look back in 2030 and the Suns are like, hey, we got 3 second-round picks for nothing because the Grizzlies didn't finish with a better record than both the Wizards and the Suns in these 2 seasons. So I think it's a worthwhile risk or a calculated gamble. I keep saying gamble. Maybe it is just Vegas getting to me. But it is maybe there's a 50% chance nothing happens. There's maybe that's even higher. 50% chance nothing happens, a 40% chance you move up 1 or 2 spots, and maybe there's a 10% chance you jump up big and somehow you get lucky. It lands on your number if you're playing roulette and you get the big win and you maybe move up 10 spots. So it's almost like a game theory type of trade. And I'm sure they have some calculus they use for what makes it worth it. How many second-round picks and how much of cutting into, say, the Dillon Brooks sign and traded player exception, how much of that is worth having an X% chance of moving up in a draft. So that's the decision they made to do. Now, the Dillon Brooks sign and trade, congratulations to Dillon Brooks. Kudos to him. It turns out the contract is even bigger than was initially reported. He signs a 4-year, $86 million deal. The Grizzlies, part of it is they get Josh Christopher. They also get a traded player exception, which looks like it's going to be under $8 million. So it's not that big of a traded player exception. That can, of course, be used, like we've said in previous episodes, that can be used to bring in a guy who makes less than that amount. But also if you bring in a player, let's just say like JaVale McGee, who maybe the Mavs want to get rid of. If you bring in a player making less than that, then you can use that player's salary, and the salary matching for that player, it actually doubles. You can take back in 200% of a player's salary. So you can only take in less than the traded player exception if you do a transaction where you don't send out any matching salary. But if you get an actual player making, say, $6 million, then you can trade him away for a guy making $12 million. So maybe you could stair-step that trade using the traded player exception. The overall deal for the Rockets is sort of head-scratching. They unloaded Usman Garuba, Ty Washington, and Josh Christopher. These are all guys who were first-round picks over the past 2 seasons. Maybe none of them pan out to be NBA players. So, okay, no harm, no foul. But they unload those guys. They trade KJ Martin, who's a very young player. I think he's 22. He's younger than a lot of draft picks, guys playing in Summer League right now. They also send out Patty Mills, who they got from the Nets, and all of that to clear cap space to sign Dillon Brooks to this massive contract. And also they send out 5 second-round picks, by the way. That's not to be forgotten. That's probably the more painful thing they sent out. So for the Rockets to unload all these young prospects, maybe they were done with every one of them, but to send out 4 guys, basically 22 and under, and 5 second-round picks, and a useful player in Patty Mills, to get Dillon Brooks, who's going to be your starter when maybe it isn't even what your team really, really needs. I don't know. It's a little bit questionable, but that deal is finally official. And by the way, Dillon Brooks, I hope you saw it, was at the Grizzlies Summer League game hanging out with Jaren Jackson Jr. They entered the court together. They sat together the whole game. Dillon went up and talked with a lot of the Grizzlies coaching staff, a lot of the Grizzlies young Summer League players. He was talking with Zach Kleiman and Taylor Jenkins. Seems like that friendship is still very much intact, and Dillon watched the Grizzlies play. It seemed like he wanted to get in the photo where it was Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., Zach Randolph, and Zaire Williams, all Grizzlies players, and of course Zebo, Grizzlies legend, who were getting a picture where Devin Walker, the Grizzlies social media guy, was taking a photo. It seemed like Dillon wanted to be in it. They're like, no, man, you got to get out of the photo. That was pretty fun to see. And of course, the Grizzlies winning another Summer League game was really, really good to see. And I will talk about that game right after this short break. Download the brand new official Grind City Media mobile app. Explore new ways to access your favorite Grind City Media content, from your favorite shows and series to news and entertainment. Stay connected with exclusive content at your fingertips with the new Grind City Media mobile app, available in both the Apple and Google Play stores. All right, the summer Grizzlies roll on to defeat the Chicago Bulls 87-80. They are undefeated in the games where their main Summer League guys play, where it's Roddy, LaRavia, Lofton, Gilliard, and Vince Williams Jr. This game was pretty ugly. I mean, 87-80, that kind of tells the story. There was a lot of pretty poor shooting. The Grizzlies got hot from the three-point line kind of when it mattered in the fourth quarter, but their main shooters, Roddy, LaRavia, and Vince Williams Jr., were 3 for 20 on three-pointers, which was pretty gross to see. The positives of this game, the overall storyline for it is the second half, Kenneth Lofton Jr. took over. Jacob Gilliard was really impactful and consistent the entire game. And then Gigi Jackson, he stepped in and made some big clutch three-pointers. He was filling in for Vince Williams Jr. Vince Williams Jr. left the game with a muscle injury. I'm going to go ahead and diagnose that as maybe like a mild hamstring injury. That's what it looked like to us non-medical professionals. I would assume that means he's done for Summer League, which is kind of sad because I really wanted to see more from him because he was so good in the 2 games he played in Utah. He was really, really good in this game, despite missing 5 out of his 6 three-point attempts. I thought his defense was really, really solid. He seems to be one of the better team rebounders out there. So I wanted to see a larger sample size of Vince Williams Jr. at this Summer League. Hopefully he pops right back, but I'm guessing any kind of minor muscular injury, they're probably going to rest him so he can totally heal up. Kenneth Lofton Jr. continues playing great. Now, his stat line, once again, I would argue ends up maybe a little bit better than how he actually played. Now, he only had 4 rebounds, and I think that's a big deal. Individual rebounding, not that important. Team rebounding is more important. But, like, he was getting, to my eye, they were getting abused on the glass. And as the center, as the biggest guy out there, matching up with some bigger centers of the Chicago Bulls, the Bulls had this gigantic center named Adama Sanogo, and also Grizzlies legend Daniel Oturu, part of the Eric Bledsoe trade back in the day. But, like, the Grizzlies, it seemed like we're getting beat on the glass pretty bad. Also, Lofton was not defending that well as far as keeping them out of the paint. He was kind of getting behind his guy and then trying to like block dunks from behind. He can't do that. So he has to play better defense. It seemed like Vitaly Potapenko was really getting on to Junior most of the game. I mean, Potapenko, if you don't know, played in the NBA for a long time as a defensive big man. So this is like his expertise. And he was certainly spending most of his coaching energy, it seemed like, just talking one-on-one with Kenneth Lofton Jr. And after the game, he said, like, yeah, Lofton's got to be a better defender. He's got to defend the pick and roll better. He has to rebound better, has to keep guys off of the glass. And so I think that is legitimate. But the offensive gifts that Kenneth Lofton Jr. has, and the thing he's demonstrated in Summer League, even when he doesn't have it going on all game, when it matters, he puts the team on his back and delivers. He scored 15 of his 23 points in the second half. He made 5 out of 6 shots in the second half. He once again made three-pointers. He hit 2 out of 3 three-pointers. He once again hit a trailing three-pointer. I asked him about that after the game. I was like, is that something that you particularly are working on? Is that something the coaching staff has asked to see from you? And he's just like, man, I've always been a good shooter. And just, yeah, I constantly work on all parts of my game. And he's been making these three-pointers. And like that's a huge thing for a guy who's such a handful in the paint. He already bullies guys in the post. If he can just add, I don't know, I would say sporadic, slightly consistent three-point shooting, it's a big weapon to have. So the questions around Lofton, still, of course, the defense, and still, of course, like how do you fit him in to a regular season rotation? Like, what do you do with him? Whose minutes are you taking? Is it Aldama? Is it Xavier Tillman? Is it, are you going to give some of Steven Adams' minutes to Lofton? Just like trying him out to see like what happens. I think the way he performs, it's something I hope to see. That they experiment with letting him play some regular season minutes. Now, the other guys who we think might play regular season minutes for the Grizzlies this year, I mean, I already talked about Vince Williams Jr. I think what he showed right now has raised his status in that race for some of the small forward minutes. But we're mainly looking, I think, at Roddy and LaRavia to fill those minutes, and both guys not particularly effective. Roddy had very little impact on this game. He finishes with 8 points on 9 field goal attempts. When he made his only three-pointer, he kind of did that exasperated, raised his hands to the sky, like, finally. And I don't know. I don't really feel like he's a guy who's earned finally the shot went in. Like, him struggling to make three-pointers is not really an aberration. He's a rookie, or he's a guy coming into his second year who shot 30% from 3 as a rookie. Going 1 out of 6 from the three-point line in a game, that is within the normal range of outcomes for a 30% three-point shooter. This is not like Steph Curry missing 2 free throws in a game or missing a bunch of threes and then finally making one. Roddy's not that consistent of a three-point shooter. So I thought that was kind of funny. Maybe I'm making too much of it. But Roddy continues to, I think, need to work on his offensive polish. And I'm yet to just totally like pin him in at a starting small forward or like a guy who's going to win all the minutes over like LaRavia or Vince Williams Jr. or maybe somebody else, or just he's going to cede a lot of his minutes to 3-guard lineups where Kennard and Smart are all going to play. So I definitely want to see some better play from Roddy overall. Jake LaRavia, he was 1 out of 8 from the three-point line. He discussed his inconsistent shooting after the game. He said, he feels like the shots all feel good. They just haven't been going in, and he understands when the shots aren't going in, he needs to get to the line. And that is something he did do effectively in this game, and he's been getting a lot of free throw attempts all summer league. I don't think, drawing fouls in summer league is a skill that's going to translate to NBA games, but it's better than not getting to the foul line at summer league, and especially in this game in the fourth quarter when the Grizzlies were clawing their way back in the game. It was Jake getting to the free throw line that was very, very important for them. Gilliard, as I said, was probably the most consistent player. I think we can just say he was the best player for the Grizzlies all night. I know Lofton had that huge second half, big fourth quarter, scores 23 points, but without Jacob Gilliard hitting shots early in the game, I mean, he made all 4 of his field goal attempts. He made all 3 of his three-point attempts. He had 8 assists. I thought Gilliard kept them within striking distance while everyone else was struggling when Roddy, LaRavia, and Vince were kind of bricking their three-pointers. I think the Grizzlies won this game because Gilliard was calming and constant from the start of the game to the finish of the game. And again, we talk about his size, being a big limiting factor and being someone the defense is not really going to respect. But, he played so solid. And maybe it's a guy they just want to have around for the hustle, like I've said before. But he's a very strong point guard. He doesn't, I don't think, he's like maybe the Tyus Jones mold, doesn't make mistakes. So a great game from Jacob Gilyard. And then, of course, we got to recognize, once again, I'm going to talk about G.G. Jackson. So G.G. Jackson had that huge game in Utah where he scored a bunch of points against the Jazz where the normal players were resting for the Grizzlies. Like, I didn't put much stock in that because, as I say frequently, somebody has to score. And the Grizzlies lost the game. It wasn't really close. But he scored 23 points in the final game in Utah. He made some threes. He had a couple of really nice drives. So that was like, all right, so he's made a three in every single Summer League game. He became more of a primary scorer in that game. Yeah, he took a lot of shots to get to those 23 points, but maybe body language doctor or reading into the way other players deferred to him, I was like, oh, all right. Like, they concede he's the number one offensive option, so that seems like pretty good for him. But in this game, he missed his first, I think, 4 shots, but in the second half, he made his last 3 3-pointers, and 2 of them were just absolutely monstrous clutch shots. He had one that put the Grizzlies up by 2 points, and then he put the final one in to ice the game, making the corner 3-pointers. So I think we can be excited what we're seeing from G.G. Jackson. I asked some NBA scouts what they thought of him, and honestly, their reactions were they kind of all rolled their eyes. And I guess he has a pretty, I don't know what the right term is, maybe just a pretty bad reputation for his behavior, his maturity, and doesn't have a lot of defenders so far among the few people I talked to who work in scouting, but everyone agrees with the 45th pick. Why not? Why not see if he can work it out, if he can maybe gain that maturity? Of course, he's the youngest guy playing in Summer League, going to be the youngest player in the NBA this coming season. He's going to have a chance to season and get better, but the skills are there, the physicality, the size is there. Taylor Jenkins, actually at the Marcus Smart press conference, was praising the way he rebounds, the way he moves, and said there's a lot of promising stuff there. So I think we can all be reasonably optimistic that G.G. Jackson is showing some promising signs as a good developmental project. Also, I think for this game, I know we always want to credit the team that wins with like, hey, they made the right adjustments, they bared down when it mattered, they hit the big shots, but also I think we should acknowledge the Chicago Bulls and their role in losing this game. Like, Dalen Terry, who was the Bulls' first-round pick in 2022, he was terrible. And in the second half, he only made 2 out of his 13 field goal attempts. So, yeah, like pretty good defense by the Grizzlies. Good job holding the Bulls to a low field goal percentage. Good job collapsing on Terry when he drove. But, like, Dalen Terry's finishing was awful. And I was watching this game with some Bulls guys who cover the Bulls, and they were just like, yeah, this guy can't score. So maybe the Grizzlies caught a little bit of a break. Maybe you guys who took the Grizzlies and against the spread caught a little bit of a break, that the Bulls were developing Dalen Terry still, and he was not up to the task. Like that Javon Freeman Liberty guy the Bulls had was destroying Memphis. But Dalen Terry definitely contributed to the Grizzlies pulling out this win. And then I guess finally I should recognize Tariq Baberovich, the Grizzlies second-round pick, who played a lot of minutes in the final game in Utah against the Jazz, and he played 13 minutes in the win over the Bulls. I think he's acquitting himself pretty nicely. He's got a pretty good-looking stroke. More importantly, he doesn't seem like he doesn't belong. Sometimes you watch guys play in Summer League, and you're like, that guy looks overwhelmed. And I don't think he looks overwhelmed. And sure, he might not ever come across and join the NBA, but for a late second-round pick who maybe just was a draft and stash or just someone you wanted to have his rights so you can include him in a transaction later, he's looked fine. He's looked fine and has made a couple threes, and so that's been fun to watch. Finally, I guess we can talk about the NBA in-season tournament just very briefly. The NBA announced the details of that. The Grizzlies are in a group. This is like a group stage in like soccer tournaments. They're in a group with the Lakers and the Suns and the Trailblazers and the Jazz. And the way this is going to work, if you don't know, there are 4 regular season games that are going to be designated as the group play. So there's not any extra regular season games being added. There's only an extra game added if you make it to the final. The final and the semifinal, those are going to be played in Las Vegas in early December. But the Grizzlies are going to play the Suns, Lakers, Jazz, and Trailblazers, and it's like a round robin. Everyone plays each other one time, so it's a little different than soccer. Normally you do like a home and away. And honestly, basically where you play your home and road games is going to determine this a lot. I think there are some flaws to the way this is set up. Like if the Grizzlies get home games against the Lakers and Suns and road games against the Jazz and the Trailblazers, well, they have a good chance of going 3-1 or 4-0, and then they're probably going to advance to the final 8. And so 4 regular season games are going to determine the group play. The teams with the best record in every group will advance. So 6 teams advance, and then 2 wildcard teams advance. That will be 1 team out of each conference, is my understanding, that has the best record who did not win their group. Now, if you're only playing 4 games, or only 4 games count for the group standings, there's going to be a lot of teams with a 3-1 or 2-2 record. And since you're going from 30 teams to 8 teams, my guess is there's going to be like a 10-way tie. Or there could be. There could feasibly be like a 6 or 7 team tie, and the way the tiebreaker is going to be decided, it's going to be point differential. And that like makes sense usually in soccer because there isn't that much scoring in soccer, but it's going to be odd if NBA coaches recognize that, hey, point differential really, really matters if we want to advance in this tournament. And will teams run the score up? Will teams bench their guys? Like, it's pretty frowned upon to score at the end of a game if you're winning, but point differential is going to be huge for this. So that's a twist that I think is going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I'm all in favor of the in-season tournament. I think it's fun. I think tournaments are fun. I think just added the extra boost of like, hey, we're playing the Jazz tonight. Oh, and by the way, it's a group stage game. I love that. That's the kind of thing I like in sports. And so we'll be able to track the group standings as it occurs. All the games, by the way, the group stage occurs through November. So all these games are early in the season. It wraps up by December 9th, which is kind of interesting because for the Grizzlies specifically, that lines up almost exactly with Ja Morant's 25-game suspension. Last year, the Grizzlies' 25th game, I think, was like December 10th. So it's feasible that, one, Ja Morant's first game is like the first game after the NBA's midseason tournament. I'm sure that will make lots of news stories. It's also feasible. I mean, I don't know what the odds are. Again, pretty low. But what if the Grizzlies advanced to the in-season tournament final? What if that's Ja Morant's first game of the season? Would he even play? Fun to dream about. I do think, by the way, the Grizzlies group, pretty tough. I think the Jazz are going to be a solid team this year. And like the Lakers, Suns, and Grizzlies, that's like 3 out of the 5 or 6 best teams in the West, I think. I mean, maybe most people are picking the Grizzlies to be maybe a little bit lower, but not all of the Western Conference pods, I feel like, have 3 teams as strong as the Suns, Lakers, and Grizzlies. But hey, that's the luck of the draw. I mean, the groups were determined by an actual drawing where, like, based on where you finished with your record in the previous season. So the Grizzlies were in, like, pot 1 of the drawing because they had one of the best records in the West last year. So I think it's fun. I like tournaments. I like group play style tournaments. So I look forward to this added twist to the NBA season. And that, I think, is everything for this episode. I'm sure there's a lot I forgot. There's a lot going on, trying to record from a hotel room, a little bit different. So anyways, thanks you guys for listening. Please, if you haven't yet, subscribe to my YouTube channel, the Grits and Grinds YouTube channel. You can support all my work at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. If that's something you're interested in doing, you can follow me on Twitter at fastbreakbreak. Anyways, hope you guys are having a great Sunday. I will talk to you soon. Go Grizz.